Hello and welcome to another episode of Leah Talks. So today we're joined by Faye. So Faye, can you introduce yourself? Let us know who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hello, Leah. I am Faye Casement. I am a Reiki Master, certified life coach, and accredited belief coding facilitator. And I help people to find themselves again. Is what I would say is my main passion. I'm sure we'll get into it in the interview, but I've been through various life experiences, and I basically don't want people to feel like I did, and so I'm here now helping other people to feel the best that they can, especially midlife onwards.
Amazing. And can I just say as well that you are amazing at this anyway, because you have your own podcast. I've been on your podcast. You have interviewed some amazing people, and just the stories and all the insights that you get out into the world is just incredible. And you are already changing so many lives. So I know that you've had a little bit of shift within your business. So can you go a little bit into that and like what you did before and how you got into what you do right now?
Sure. Okay, buckle up. Is a story. So as Leah said, in marketing speak, I've changed my niche, but yeah, I haven't really. It's just I'm refining it as you go because we grow, don't we, as humans? And I'm changing, and I'm changing my interests and passions and recognizing different things as we go, as we go through our business entrepreneurship as well as going through life. So I came into this through a weight loss journey. I'd never heard of life coaching before. Been on a ton of diets, and I came across this one. I basically, on my 40th birthday, and I'm 47 years young in a few weeks' time, I came across a podcast, and it introduced me to this thing called life coaching. And I thought, oh, well, I'll give that a go. And so that then led to me getting such a passion and a bug for coaching and growth work and everything like that. And the transformation that I'd had through that program, I wanted to build my own. And so Wellness for Women was born. And that was a membership and me coaching, helping people to have a better relationship with food. So it was never, for me, I believe in health at every size. I think that you get a right to choose what you do with your body, have huge thoughts about diet culture, societal norms, those kinds of things. And so it was about coming at our relationship with food from a different way. And as Leah said, I had the Wellness for Women podcast. That's actually paused at the moment, but I do have a plan to introduce a Reflect, Grow and Heal one very soon. And as I said, as I started to grow and started to really think about, well, what did I want to do, what my purpose was, what my passions were, things started to shift a little bit. I introduced belief coding, which literally can work with anything. And even when I started coaching, I never really wanted to be put in a box. I don't like with marketing where they say that you have to niche. And I just wanted to help everybody with everything because I just want to help people ultimately. And so with belief coding, because it works at a subconscious level, we can do all sorts of things. If you wanted to stop smoking, nail biting, habit forming, that kind of thing. But it also works on things like relationship with food because it's really more about why we eat. And so again, I started to evolve. And then last year, as again we'll get into perhaps in a moment, I had a little bit of a downturn in my mental health. I started to feel a bit burnt out. And then I realized that actually what I wanted to do was help people more with that side of it, which in turn will still help with food. And I do still help people with their relationship with food, but it's now changed. Um, and in my burnt out state, all I could actually do was learn Reiki, and then I became a Reiki master. And again, that opened up a whole world of spirituality that I didn't have before. I was somebody who was very much stuck in their front brain, having had a corporate career for 20 plus years. I was very much in the front brain, and Reiki started to help me get a little bit more into my body. It's very attuned with yoga that you do. And so yeah, I just everything just sort of is evolving, and now, like I say, I'm I'm looking to help people on the whole spectrum of um, life, really.
Yes. And I know a lot of business people, a lot of people listening to this might have their own businesses. And I feel like we can get so stuck in the whole niche thing when actually, although, yeah, you did focus a little bit on weight loss, but in a healthy way. And what you do now, like at the end of the day, it's still, like you said, it's still the same thing. You're still helping people. So it's not like you've really changed that much of what you're doing. You've just got a little bit more specific, I guess, in what you've done. So I've had a few Reiki masters on this podcast actually. So we've spoken about that. But what is belief coding? Can you go a little bit into that and what it is for anyone listening who doesn't know?
Sure. Happily. You've got to try and get me off when you start me talking about belief coding. So, belief coding was created by Jessica Cunningham. It's a relatively new modality. I think she probably created it 3, 4 years ago, something like that. And I became accredited last year. I'm also training in the advanced version of it, and also I'm on the master's program, which basically means I can deliver it to groups. So I can do one-to-one sessions, group sessions, and the changes that people have after are just absolutely amazing. And so it works directly on the subconscious. So it's not hypnotherapy, but I guess people are more akin to thinking, like when they think subconscious, they might think hypnotherapy, but it is very, very different, and there is no hypnotherapy involved, and it's just we're just talking to the subconscious, um, and so really um, it's about again, it's all about the why for me. I'm a big why girl. Ultimately, we're living our lives at the moment with a subconscious that's running the show, even though we don't know that it's running the show, because 95% of our um, thoughts come from the beliefs that we've built over the years from all of our experiences um, throughout life. And it's why when you go into a movie, you could sit there with hundreds of people, but everybody will experience that movie different because we've all got our own life lenses. And sometimes those lenses get a little bit skewed, or if you want to use the computer analogy, it's like we've got this program running and some of them glitch out, and we need to just go back in and change that programming. And that's what belief coding can do. We can basically go in and we can it's not about if there's any if anybody's had like a negative experience, it's not about reliving that negative experience, but it is about almost re-experiencing it. It's about changing the emotion that we have with that, and so that it's then not impacting us in our current lives. But it's an absolutely fascinating and beautiful process. I absolutely adore it. It's definitely that, and Reiki are now my two biggest go-to modalities. The life coaching was great and it's brilliant, and it obviously helps with the others, if that makes sense, when you're talking to people, questioning, getting an understanding of how our brains work. But the belief coding, it has such a profound impact on people. And it's also beautiful because I say we kind of go in, and so part of it is where we're working with sometimes a memory, a moment, it can be a feeling, a statement, a dream. We can literally work with anything. And and we call it the reflection. And when you're in that reflection work, especially when I'm doing one-to-one work, it's like I'm there with them. And the whole point is, like I say, to shift it from whatever negative emotion they had with it to a positive one. And we can do that in a really, really creative way. So like I did one on myself because you can self-facilitate. And I had this experience where um there'd been this it wasn't necessarily a memory, it was sort of a series of memories, but what I ended up doing was kind of seeing it in my mind's eye, almost, if you think of it that way. And so you're asking, what is it that this needs? And in the end, I took a picture of that moment, and what I wanted to screw it up, and I stuck it in the bog of eternal stench from Labyrinth. A little chat with Sir Brutus and a few of the other characters. And off I went, and I don't have that issue anymore. And it was actually all about entrepreneurship. I've been carrying this belief that it wasn't safe to be self-employed, because I grew up with the message of, you always have to have a job and, protect your house and bricks and mortar. And so my brain was interpreting that as something scary, something dangerous. And so it was holding me back in my business. But now that's in the bog of eternal stench. And so since then, all that has gone, and it's absolutely changed my business this past couple of months. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. But fun, that's the thing. Healing for me should be as fun as possible. I've had counselling over the years, tried CBT. It all felt quite, no offense to counsellors or CBT people, but it just didn't work for me. I found it really quite heavy. Whereas this, we go in and we lighten the load, and it's almost like I can see that negativity, that negative experience lifting from people's bodies, because they get this smile on their face that they perhaps haven't had in years over something that they've been working on. And it's quite addictive.
Yeah, it
Quite addictive.
sounds it. And I get what you mean,
Yeah.
because like whenever I think about therapy, the first thing that comes to my mind is, oh my God, the emotional heaviness. So to switch that and have the lightness, that just
Mm,
sounds better. So is it a lot of
yeah.
like visualization in the belief coding then, like with yours?
Yeah. It can be. So obviously some people might think, oh, but I can't visualize, like if you've ever tried to do a guided visualization, people will sometimes see, but I don't see anything. I don't get those experiences. Whereas really, again, we can work with what we've got. So when I'm in that, I'm not necessarily seeing a complete and utter movie show in my mind. And I think maybe that's the misconception sometimes when people think about visualization, that maybe they think it's supposed to be this sort of, like, say, rich cinematic experience almost, whereas actually it's more about getting that sense or sensation or understanding. And something I've been doing as well, just to go off a tangent to come back, um, when I was giving myself some distance Reiki last year, and to test some audio that I put together for my distance Reiki that I do. And I basically woke up from it having had this really trippy visualization where it basically told me that I needed to go to the local spiritualist church. And so I've been going to psychic development classes for about 6 months or so, at a local company called the Singing Bowl. And so it sort of opened my eyes, and that intuition, when you're working with somebody, not just trying to follow a rigid rule. um but when you're looking at psychic mediumship, they talk about the clairs, and so I'm sure you've probably had mediums or people with spirituality who've talked about the clairs. And so I think about it a little bit like that. So some mediums, they might have clairaudience, where they hear. They might have clairsentience, where they feel. And clairvoyance is where you see. And I kind of feel like maybe people who've got a predisposition to one of the clairs, and again, even in learning, isn't it, you get visual learners, auditory learners, and so I think that probably for me is how people experience things differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So when somebody comes to you, and I guess my question is, when someone knows that they need to change something in their life
Mhm.
and they come to you for help, how do you know which one to go for? Like, do you give them a mix of belief coding, Reiki, and the life coaching? Can you just like sense what they need?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, some people would come to me because they know that they want Reiki. They've had Reiki before. They want that calm, the healing. Other people, if they're coming with a specific problem, chances are we're going to have a chat. Most of the time, it's going to be belief coding, because it literally works on everything. But I do incorporate the Reiki into it for people who want that. So you can imbue your sessions with Reiki when you're working with people at a reflection level. I can send them Reiki. So there can be that crossover in that sense. But I think it really just depends on what people want to work on. So if you want peace and calm and just general healing, you're going to go for Reiki, because it goes where it goes where it wants to go. Basically, it goes where it needs it the most. It's not targeted specifically, although I think you can play about with it and try and guide it with a bit of mindfulness. Um, Whereas with belief coding, it's far more targeted. But ultimately, one of the things that I'm just working on now is a new membership where it's going to have the full spectrum, so it'll be able to meet people wherever they're at. So there's going to be distance Reiki for people who want a midweek reset. There's going to be some mindfulness for people who need to sort of step it up a little notch, some coaching for people who want to step it up again, and then there's the group belief coding for people who are like, no, I need this, and so they can kind of travel between all of them, which
Yeah.
makes me feel really good to be able to incorporate all of the things that I've learned together, because that's ultimately again what I want to do. I want to help people and I want to tell everybody about these fabulous things that,
Yeah.
like I say, 10 years ago I didn't know about, and I really wish that I had, let alone 20 years ago, because I've had an up and down life, should we say, and so it would have, yeah, if only I'd have known about these things years ago.
Yeah. Your membership sounds absolutely amazing. So when you said
Thank you.
like you wish you knew this back in the day, what's
Hmm.
the biggest shift? Like what were you like then compared to how you are
Hmm.
now?
Yeah. So I was a painfully shy child. And then, due to some name calling and other things that happened in my earlier years, I then had ridiculously low self-esteem, probably until as I started to build a bit, I think, in my 30s, when I found my groove with some friends, that kind of thing. But I certainly would not have been online on a podcast, and again, you promote your business, don't you? And I used to be more of a Facebook voyeur where I would look at what people were doing. I would never post, whereas now I post, so I would have said I was very invisible. I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to be seen. I was very disempowered. As I said, I feel like um everything was the world was happening to me, and I think I felt very out of control and disempowered because I didn't know there was another way. I just assumed that it wasn't. Again, it was a funny thing to explain because I didn't know that I was unhappy. I had my moments of unhappiness, if that makes sense. And I certainly, like I say, I had various different bouts of depression, and I'd like postnatal depression, and I had various different sort of stresses and depression, as you do sort of naturally throughout life sometimes. Um, but yeah, I think it was just that mostly I was very disempowered, that I didn't know the power that I had, or that I could control or improve my life. Whereas when I found out that, hold on, our thoughts lead to our feelings, lead to our actions, lead to our results, and you tell me that I can change some of these things, and then that's going to make my life different. And so then all of a sudden I found drive, I found purpose, um, I grew in confidence, obviously started my business, wanted to become visible. So yeah, it's completely changed I feel like it's completely changed my life, changed who I am. And I had a friend of mine actually the other day, because you don't necessarily talk about these things with your friends per se actively. I mean, they know what you do or whatever. And she went, "Do you know what? I was talking about you the other day." She said, "You've really changed." And I went, "Oh, have I?" Thinking, "Oh God, she thinks I've really changed, like in a bad way." And then she said, "No." She says, when I first knew you, you're more confident, and you just driven, and you really," she said, "I was inspirational." I'm feeling like I'm being cringe now, but
Not at all.
and I was
Carry
just
on.
like, oh. Yeah, I was like, oh. Because people don't necessarily tell you that, do they? And I
Mhm.
think these things can happen as well quite subtly, because it's not necessarily that you just change overnight. But I definitely feel more powerful because I feel like I've got the tools in my toolbox. I mean, again, if you've ever been to any kind of therapy before, they was like, "Hey, you got to get tools for your toolbox," and you kind of, whatever, and then you never do them. Whereas I feel like I've found tools now. I get it more, um, and that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. So that leads me into the next question, which was going to be, what daily like habits or rituals do you do to help you, I guess, stay this way now?
Hmm. So yeah, so actually my daily habits and rituals probably have gone out the window, if I'm totally honest, of late. Really since I started my business. When I was first coming into this and on my weight loss journey, I was very sort of centered on me, my weight loss, my personal growth. I was setting myself up with like daily habit plans in the morning, all those kinds of things. And there's definitely a time and a place for those. But I am a huge advocate of doing things your way and when they're right to do so. So sometimes people will say, do this thing, and it almost becomes so rigid and robotic that you're supposed to do this thing all the time. And I'm pretty sure you'll say it with yoga because obviously you've been on the show, and I know we've always, we had quite a bit of a discussion, but it's a practice, isn't it? Just like yoga, if you say to yourself, right, I have to do yoga, I must do yoga every morning, you're soon not going to want to do it because the language you're using isn't nourishing, and your body, you will naturally then come up with resistance by telling yourself that you have to do this thing in this certain way every day. Some people thrive on it, but I think the majority of us humans know we don't. Whereas if we go with the flow a bit more and create that flow, know that it's there, incorporate it, try to, and we try to do these things. I'm cautious of the word try because that can be a bit of a get out of jail free card sometimes as well. But it's really about that awareness, isn't it? Where am I at right now? Where do I want to be? What's going to be the best thing for me right now? And so I go through phases of having routines and habits and changing it up a bit. Maybe it's me. I get a bit bored. I think I might. I speculate as to whether I have ADHD. So maybe it's a me thing. But
I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's good to have a little bit of a change. I always have my morning practice, but my morning practice changes over time constantly
yeah,
because I do struggle to stick
yeah,
to one thing. I've recently got into
yeah.
a lot of Kundalini yoga, and that is you're meant to do the same practice for like 90 days, up to
Hmm.
more if you can. But I do
Yeah,
struggle with that, and I do like I'll do that one bit for the 90 days, but I'll change everything else around it just so that I'm mixing it up. So yeah, I completely
yeah,
understand that one for sure.
yeah.
Um,
And I get and I understand the discipline, and I think a lot of people think that they have to be disciplined to see change. It's a bit, and they have to be consistent to see change. And again, from a weight loss perspective, you see people all the time. I wasn't consistent on my weight loss, wasn't it? And then we start to beat ourselves up over these things, and it just doesn't help. If you want to rule yourself with an iron rod, then by all means, you have at it, like I say, because it's really about you creating what suits and what works for you. But I would prefer that people did it in a way that felt good, because I think that that's then more sustainable. So if discipline floats your boat, fine, use it. And if you want to, grow those muscles, as it were, then sure, push yourself, try those things out. But I think it's then not getting caught up in the words. I'm not NLP trained, but words have such powerful meaning, you know. And so I have a real problem with the word consistency, because, like I said, it gets bandied about as to being consistent. You have to be consistent, but I feel it's really restrictive. And if I feel restricted, I'm not going to do it. So
yes.
therefore, you have to change your language to encourage yourself and play about with that and find what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And that really goes with the whole ADHD and all of that as well, because if you are a bit neurodivergent, those kind of words are very
Hmm.
triggering. So they are going to have an
Hmm.
effect. And I know this with my daughter. I do the same. I have to shift
Hmm.
words that I say. And this is, I used to do
Hmm.
this practice. I think it was like a 28-day challenge. And I always wanted to get through the whole thing. And if, say, I got to day 5 and I missed day 6, I would feel like I had to start all the way again. I would the next
You
day I would make
failed.
sure, yep,
Yeah.
I go straight back to day one.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
now I don't do that. I'm like, oh well, I missed a day. Let's carry on from there. And it's again,
Yeah.
like we said, the words and the thoughts that I was telling myself that I had failed. So I had to start again to do it. Whereas actually I could have done the
Mm.
28 days. It might just took me longer, but I still could have done it. But
Mm-hmm.
my words were stopping me
Yeah.
because I was like, nope, you got to start again, which is the definitely the wrong way, which, I guess that kind of thing is what you do. The belief coding, the life coaching. It's all
And
related.
seeing where that comes from as well. I mean, I think sometimes, um, school, obviously, we spend such a long time in school in our formative years can have an impact on us because, again, we're almost taught, we're kind of told to be disciplined, aren't we? And rigid in how we're supposed to do these things and learn with those things. And that doesn't necessarily always um, fit and suit us. And even, I mean, what came to mind when you're talking about the, like, say, doing a 28-day practice or something like that. Um, Things like the calendars, it's surprising, you have people, again, it's sort of a standing joke, isn't it, that people can only start diets on Mondays, for example.
Mhm.
And it's like almost that we've been trained by a calendar that got created by a person at some point in time, and you get to the point where you like, I can't, you sort of see a new month looming or something like that, or if you've got a diary that starts on a Sunday but you're a Monday to Sunday person, it's almost like you can't go past it. Does that make sense? Me and my
Yeah.
friends, we actually joke that we should start Planners Anonymous because we've like bought so many like journals, planners, whatever over the years. But I know that when I get one that starts on doesn't start on a Sunday because I'm a Sunday to Saturday girl, it's like I can't buy that planner. And it's just like these small rules, and where do
Mhm.
they come from? And
Yeah.
clearly you can start on any day of the week, but
Yeah.
there's
Oh,
there's
it's
these
so
little
true.
resistances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the problem is if you put it off, typically you then don't start it at all, or then
Mhm.
you feel like you've missed your window, or
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and we can set ourselves up to fail by not knowing these little nuances about what's actually really going on in our brain at the time. So,
Yeah. And this is why
mm.
it's so important to get this kind of these podcasts and the work that we do like out into the world so that people are growing up or kids are growing up knowing that there's a different way.
Hmm.
You don't have to just
Yeah,
stick to the typical
yeah,
way of life. Um,
yeah,
and I know
yeah.
my mum and dad will be like not happy if they heard this, but I am really considering homeschooling my daughter through secondary school because I hate the way that secondary schools are run. And I think for teenagers, it is one of the worst things that you can do to them is put them in a room with such strict rules when they're going through hormones and everything. And I've got it into my
Mm,
head that I want her to grow up in a better way, in a different way of life. So
mm.
yeah, I'm completely changing my belief coding for sure because that's not the way I was brought up.
Yeah. I think it is difficult. I mean, it's like everything in life. There are pros and cons, isn't it? And obviously, as a parent, you will make the right decision for you and your daughter, and no doubt you'll talk to her and ha work together to try and figure that out at the end of the day. Um, or the other alternative is that obviously she goes, but then you work on the bits that you're not so keen on and do a bit of a hybrid, isn't it, of some sort. But I do wish that one thing that I do wish is that this was taught in schools. So, as I understand it, Reiki, for example, is taught in schools in the East. It's not even a thing here, but even just general mindfulness techniques, or I think probably the odd person, the odd time it's brought in, but even just explaining to kids at an early age how your brains work, why are you feeling what you're feeling, and of course there might be a little book here and there or something like that, but it's not really a lived and breathed practice in schools. um and I think it should be, because if it was, they might find the kids were obviously more engaged in the schooling as well, and that's got to then help the teachers as well, I guess, but let alone life skills, isn't it,
Hmm.
really? So I
Yeah,
think
and
that's one
this,
thing that, yeah, sorry, carry on.
no, go on, you go.
I was just going to say, I think that's one of the things that that it kind of skips out on, isn't it? It focuses so much on the academics that you forget the life skill side of it, even if it's like counting money, or managing your money, let alone before we've even started working on how our brains work and how dynamics work in groups or whatever, to understand why friendship groups are having difficulties. So I'm sure your daughter's about the same age my daughter was when there was a lot of friendship group issues as the girls start to kind of come into their own and really start to develop their thoughts and feelings and their identity about who they are, and it creates these rubs, and God
Yes,
help them if they've got into some kind of trio friendship scenario where there's push and
definitely.
pulls from two directions.
Yeah.
But sitting down and helping them navigate that rather than sort of yeah, and understanding that would help them, I think.
And kids nowadays just seem so much more grown up and with it. Like, I feel like half of the questions that my daughter's asking, I mean, she's 8, but half the questions that she's asking,
Mm.
I wouldn't have asked that at her age. Like, that would have been years later.
Yeah,
So they are very, very
yeah.
switched on. And I think this is why it's so good for the parents to learn all this and to, do the belief coding themselves, because it
Hmm.
passes on. Like, kids are going to learn from
Yeah.
you. So as long as you can show them this way, then they're going to pick it up, which I think is amazing. So on that
Yeah.
note, where can people get in touch with you if they would like to try any of this? I mean, you've got the Reiki, the life coaching, the belief coding. I mean, yeah, let us know.
Yeah. So it's reflectgrowandheal.com with a not the fancy and that's wherever it is on the screen. It's typed out, and I think I'm now doubting my own
I'll
website.
leave a link anyway. Yeah, let me know. I'll leave a
No,
link.
leave a link. No, I'm sure it's reflectgrowandheal.com. I think you did. I put commas. I don't know. You don't type your own website sometimes, and
No,
I'm
you
like, I
don't.
should prepare for this. I probably didn't. But again, even on that, going back to how I've changed, I was such a perfectionist before. I didn't like I say I didn't want to be seen, and I certainly never wanted to be seen doing anything that would, get me in trouble or for people to judge me. I'd had enough of that and judged myself enough over the years. Whereas now I'm like, no, I've messed up. It's fine.
Yeah, gotta
And
flow with it
even that just
sometimes.
takes pressure off life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reflect, grow, and heal. You're probably better to Google my name because I'm pretty unique name.
Yeah, and I will make sure that I leave all of your links down below as well. So
Thank
if
you.
anybody has been really interested in this conversation and you're interested in any of this, then feel free to check Faye out, or feel free to message any of us if you have any questions. And thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.